Watching Channel 16, your Fairfax County government channel. You're watching Channel 16, your Fairfax County government channel. Planning Commission Roundtable, Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. on Fairfax County Government, Channel 16.
Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I am using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. This month, I'm pleased to have our Braddock District Lord and Lady Fairfax honorees, George Klein and Nell Hurley. Each year, each member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors selects two individuals who have demonstrated outstanding volunteer service, heroism, or other special accomplishments to receive the award. Our recipients this year exemplify these qualities, and I appreciate their taking time out of their busy day to sit down and talk. Nell, George, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, honored to be here.
You know, we do the Lord and Lady Fairfax every year as part of Celebrate Fairfax, our Fairfax County Fair, and it's just a great opportunity that I know I and my board colleagues enjoy because we're able to recognize folks who have done so much over, a number of years for the community. And you guys both sort of fit that category phenomenally. And so I appreciate everything you do. When I talk about engaged citizens, you guys are great examples of that. So thank you. And don't want to make you guys brag about yourselves. That's my job to brag about you. But let's just talk a little bit about all you've done in the community. George, I'm going to start with you. You're with our Braddock District Council, been on the board for a number of years. You've been on the board of your local civic association, Old Forge, Surrey Square. And just talk a little bit about the importance of being involved in your community like that.
Well, it's more than important. It's critical. Trying to get a community in this day and age to work together requires that you've got a clear kind of objective. And one of the things we've done in Old Forge, Surrey Square has been able to band around what I call, you got to have a gimmick, to band around some sort of an objective that people can be proud of. And so we've done a few of those things. And that has been the difference between our community and other communities where volunteerism may not be quite as prevalent.
That's right, that sometimes people will, it might be hard to say to people, come out to a meeting every month, year after year after year, but when you have an event or you have a project, and you had Turtle Park, let's talk about Turtle Park, because that was a great example of your community really coming together, and the result was that your community got something that otherwise would not have happened.
Yeah, and I can't take 100% of the credit for that by any means. That was a group of young mothers new to the neighborhood who looked at the condition of our parks and said, gee, they're old. They're 50 years old. The stuff isn't good. Probably, shouldn't be used by the children. And they got together and they started to foster kind of an idea, had a kernel of an idea. At that point, the Civic Association got behind them and said, look, you form a committee in the Civic Association and we'll give you the backing that you need. So the people who were most interested in it then went out and we established relationships with the Parks Department, with the Parks Foundation, who became the reciprocal of money we connected, or the recipients of the money that we collected. We went out and we started to work with the neighborhood merchants and found them very receptive. Then we started collecting in the neighborhood, and all of a sudden we wound up with $21,000 and some grant money, and all of a sudden we had people saying, well, look, if you've got the money, we've got the labor. You might not have gotten this park until the mid-2020s if you had to depend on coming up on the schedule.
Right.
So we had another park that was within the Chesapeake Bay area, the drainage area, and that park was destined to go kind of in any case. So we made a deal with the Parks Department to let that park go back to nature, and we established a group of folks who went out and helped plant natural foliage in there. And in exchange for that, and in exchange for our efforts to raise the money, next thing you know, we had a pretty nice park. And so it's all a matter of a project.
You know, and that's just a great example, too, of partnerships. Things work well when people and different groups and organizations come together, and we do that a lot in the county. And here you had a neighborhood, and you had people going to their civic association, parks, stormwater, and you're right, it would have been 10 years at least before you would have gotten that playground, and now you have a brand new playground in your neighborhood, and it's because a few people stepped up and said, let's do that, and they did that because you had a community where you know, you had leadership and people who said, you know, we need to be an active community, and that's an important thing.
And it's right across the street from my house.
Yeah,
and now
even
every
better.
once in a while it gets noisy.
And every once in a while,
But
George
we,
goes out and he swings on the swings and
yell at the kids.
Turtle, there you go. So,
But we love listening to them, and it's getting well used, which was one of the objectives.
Right.
So.
And that's a great thing. And Nell, you're no stranger to community volunteerism from your many years on the PTA and with sports and everything else. And just talk about kind of what motivates you and what has motivated you over the years to be so active and to really give back so much.
I'm a mother. I have 4 daughters and want the best environment, best upbringing for my children. Be involved in the schools, and no matter how busy you are or what your interests are, you can be involved with the schools somehow. You can do meetings in the evening, you can volunteer during the day. Whatever your skill set is, you can be a volunteer with the school system. And you meet such great people that you meet lifelong, and you also can talk to other mothers about what do you do about this situation that's coming up, and you develop a support network that way, and that's, you become more involved in the community, you develop your own set of friends, so it's very rewarding, self-rewarding to become more involved in the schools. On the sports, I knew nothing about soccer when our youngest daughter wanted to play soccer, but okay, I can sort uniforms, that I can do, so I became the uniform director for 1,500 uniforms a year with Braddock Road Youth Soccer, and then I did fields director, and then I learned about a lot of the weird things I never dreamed about fields, which I'm now using as a planning director, saying, no, you need space for a corner kick because in soccer, you know, so it all feeds on itself. You meet these great people, you learn a lot, and it's very rewarding.
I think what's great about that, you know, what you just said is people often are sort of afraid to volunteer because they say, oh, I don't know enough, I'm not an expert. And as you just said, you can know absolutely nothing about something, and you just sort of show up and you say, well, fine, I can stack up shirts, and the next thing you know, you're organizing how many dozens of fields and putting teams on them and everything else, and you know, you just work your way up the chain, and there's a lot that people can do and give back, and they do every day.
That's what, again, I'll brag on Braddock Road Youth Soccer. It's one of the great features of Braddock District, and of course we have some players from outside the district, but it's one of the real strong points in Braddock District is the Braddock Road Youth Club.
Right. You know, and I wonder, both of you, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about your backgrounds. You both served in the military, and you know, and I think that probably had something to do with just the leadership that you've developed and shown in the community. And George, tell us a little bit about your experiences.
Army ROTC, Air Defense Officer, and spent 13 years on active duty. And after that 13 years, while serving in the Pentagon and looking at more time in the Pentagon, decided that maybe I wanted to do something else. So left that world. My wife and I decided then that we would be permanent residents here in Fairfax and in the Braddock district. We started in Kings Park and then moved out to where we are now, out in Old Forge, Surrey Square. So after that 13 years, really started working with various companies who serviced the government. And I've wound up running government projects for just about every government agency, Department of State, AID, and several others. And in 2007, looked at that and looked at what I was doing and said, geez, you know, we're lucky enough to be able to retire, and maybe we could do something else, and decided that community service might be something that I wanted to get involved in. So we left that world and moved to things like Braddock District Council and very local government in terms of community civic associations. And that's about it. A lot of project management work, mostly in the IT world, and mostly supplying IT professionals to various government agencies.
And that work certainly shows and transfers well to community work. Nell, you've been all over the world with the Navy, so tell us about that.
Well, now you've opened up Pandora's box. I used to be a Navy recruiter. In my 25 years in the Navy, I've been around the world 3 times, thanks to a tour in Diego Garcia, which is a little tiny island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I've danced with Prince Charles. I've had shrapnel come through my window in Northern Ireland. I've been through floods, tsunamis, coup attempts, and a volcanic eruption in the Philippines. I've had command. I've had 4 kids on active duty. I married a fellow on active duty as lieutenants and retired as a captain. He retired as an admiral, and you too can do it all in today's Navy. Da 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 da.
But that experience, I mean, certainly all the things you did in the Navy, I think help explain how you've been able to juggle being a parent and all the PTA work and the soccer fields and everything else. You learned leadership.
Yes, very much so. When I was the volunteer coordinator at one of our local elementary schools, and I was talking to the new coming kindergarten parents, and I looked at them all and I said, I bet you're all pretty busy, and some of you have younger children at home, and you don't know how you're going to have time to be volunteering in the school. Well, let me tell you about my life. I'm an active duty Navy captain, and I'm on the road, et cetera, et cetera. I said, and somehow I find time to be here because my kids are important, their education's important, and you make time for what's important.
And a lot of people respond to that in Fairfax. We have a lot of people who, you know, there's a saying, if you need something done, find the busiest person you can find, and they'll find a way to get it done. And I think we see that over and over again. And now you now serve on the Planning Commission. We could do a whole show on that. Maybe we will, not tonight, but you work with our communities on reviewing land use applications.
And that is the fascinating, best job you can get in this county, to tell you the truth. It's a secret, everybody. But we get involved in everything. You mentioned the stormwater, the parks, and we do dog parks, we do historic buildings, we do, you name it. Everything I've ever learned in anywhere in the Navy or any place else, I find use for it in the Planning Commission. And people listen to us. We really make a difference. And again, I'm working with a group of people that are so professional and have so much experience. It's just really makes you feel good to be a member of that group.
And we appreciate all the work you guys do, because you review all the land use development applications before they come to our board, and it is a rare occurrence that we do not follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission, so we appreciate all that. George, you mentioned Braddock District Council, an organization I work with a lot. That's where our neighborhood leaders come together, and most of our magisterial districts in the county have some sort of a council. It's sometimes hard to get people to come out to meetings and such, but it's important that our communities talk together, you know, talk with each other.
Yeah, I think we've made an attempt here recently to try and solve some of those structural issues in terms of getting people to come out and be involved. And a lot of that is the use of the technology and doing things more in terms of emails and websites and tweets and all that stuff. And we're getting into that deeper because people are busy. Nowadays with working households and small kids and all the engagement on the fields that Nell is helping develop, people don't have time to do some things and come to a once-a-month meeting just to hear about what everybody else has done for the last month. So we're pushing hard with Braddock District Council to make it a place that really makes a difference. And so we're starting to institutionalize some things. In February now, we've institutionalized the presentation by the school board representative of the budget, which then is immediately followed in March by the presentation of the county budget, so that those things now kind of come together. Didn't used to be that way. Used to be kind of both things happening at once and you weren't sure who was going to talk. So we've got those two things lined up, and then that's followed by all of our state legislators coming to the meeting and standing up and talking about what they're doing in Richmond, and talking about, and answering questions about what we're interested in. So we're starting to get now in the Braddock District Council a kind of a professional sequence of things that build to some of our more social events. We'll have our Best of Braddock Awards coming up here, and we'll have Taste of Braddock, which is all the restaurants in the Braddock District providing food for people, and we'll have our nominations and our awards for the Best of Braddock, which is also connected to a meal. So as we start to look at those things, we now have really something to take up a good part of each part of the year. So then the whole idea is to get the information out to the other people, the ones who didn't come to the meeting, the ones who are represented in the council, but who just didn't make it that evening. How do we distribute that information? And how do we disseminate the information about all the things that the county has available? We have an Aging in Place Committee, which has been very successful in terms of holding separate meetings from the Braddock District Council meetings, but providing a link, a channel, if you will, to all of the things that the county provides to folks who are in that situation where they may want to age in place. So we're doing a lot. We could do a lot more, and we're working on expanding the things that we're doing, mostly to disseminate information, but also to make sure that we put the right people in front of our membership so that they can get their questions answered directly by the folks who are involved.
You talk about getting information out, and it's so hard here because we're next to Washington, D.C., and so all the national news kind of comes over everything. But it's so important, and Nell, I know with PTA, Braddock Road, of course, the communication with parents being so critical, and talk a little bit about what you learned about the importance of that communication, and also how do we do it? So if community leaders or just people are watching who are saying, yeah, I'd like to do a certain thing in my neighborhood, but how do I communicate? How do I motivate people? With
every particular group, of course, it's a constant effort to keep up with the emails and to make sure the emails are getting through, whether it's the PTA, to try to get messages, not just to the PTA members, but to all of the parents in the school. Same with Braddock Road, Youth Soccer, any other group, you work on your own group, but for the outreach, all sorts of things. I'll talk about the Land Use Committee that you started about 4 years ago. And that's a group of citizens, and I'll recruit for that too, that we can always use more involved citizens that are willing to come out once a month to a meeting, and then we form subgroups to look at a particular project. And that's when we need the outreach, to reach out to the community that might be affected by putting in 20 houses in this neighborhood, or whatever is going to change, that we need the input from the community. And so it's reaching out through the Homeowners Association that work closely, of course, with Braddock District Council, but to and it's neighbors reaching neighbors, and these are all volunteers, and we're trying to help you get the input, collect all the input for you so that you know what the community is really feeling. And we often hear, and that's how we hear, but we really don't want this, but we really need that. And that's how you get the information, and then that's how we make the whole community better. It's because we all have to talk to each other.
George, you touched on that earlier, the importance of people being involved in their community. And it seems that our culture has become one of sort of people who are good at identifying maybe a problem or even an opportunity and then saying, well, gee, when is someone going to do that? And what we really try to turn around is get people to say, look in the mirror. What can you do to be part of making something good happen? And that's important for communities because there is no someone else. I mean, it really begins with what can we do ourselves.
And again, if you've got something to focus on, that to me is the key. Having now done this for several years and had varying degrees of success trying to get people involved, if you've got something to focus on that give people a feeling that they're doing something good, that they're doing something that's measurable to them in terms of a positive impact, like that park, like another project like the trail along Long Branch Creek, and working with all the folks who are working with Tony Vellucci right now to try and get something done along that trail. So we've got a group in the neighborhood that is there and is starting to focus on our contribution to that particular trail and that piece that goes behind our neighborhood. And I guess, Nell, goes behind your neighborhood
Yes.
because you're on the other side of it.
Right.
And that is, that's the project. So then you expand that and you get people involved. And then those same people all of a sudden are showing up for international night at the pool. And those same people are showing up for getting kids on the school on Halloween and taking pictures of all the kids in their costumes. So the stuff grows, and it grows from within. But you have to have the project, and you have to have not one, you have to have a project and a series of projects so that there's always something there for people to coalesce around. So we're, Tony doesn't know it yet, but we're on the track of the trail.
I think that's a great example, though, that today too many people are feeling that they can't make a difference. And in fact, what you've just talked about, really the whole show here is about how in your neighborhood, people did make a difference. There's a playground there that we know would not be there today if people hadn't stepped up and said, gee, we should have a better playground. And you know that you are going to have a trail connection in your neighborhood because people are going to step up and say, we want this done, and we're going to push it, and we're going to get to the front of the line, and we're going to be able to make those things happen. And so I think it's important for people to see those successes and to hear that it's happening, and that there are places where neighborhoods and people have come together to make things happen, and they've made a difference. And so, Nell, when it comes to the Planning Commission and land use, it's the same thing. People, you see it just as I see it. People think that, this development project it's a done deal, it's all coming in. And what we know is that when people get involved in talking about these applications and talking about what a shopping center should look like, or talking about what that empty piece of land ought to look like or something, they do make a difference.
And if you just want to learn something about whatever, trees or historic preservation, whatever, you can come in as a newcomer and you start meeting the people who do this for a living. On the other hand, this is Washington, D.C. We have experts in tree preservation and historic preservation and energy and you name whatever. We need those experts too who are willing to contribute their well-earned expertise that they've gained over decades in the professional world that can come in onto these various committees to say, well, this is what I know about invasive trees or whatever it is. So we can use everybody, either as a newcomer that you're interested in it, or that you're an expert and you want to share your knowledge with the community. Braddock has lots of volunteers in lots of places, and as I said from the beginning, it's those people I've met, pick one at random, Ellen Oppenheim, who our kids were in preschool together, but I got to know her when we were trying to get Woodson High School renovated. And she is a PhD in neuroscience, and the things that she went to talk to the people in New York about, because Woodson is the hearing impaired center high school for the entire Northern Virginia, how to get special triple pane windows because you need a more silent environment for deaf students. If you've ever sat in a conference with an air conditioning unit next to you, you can't hear anything. So we needed to have a quiet school to help the hearing impaired. And you know what? That helps all the students to have a really quiet environment with larger furnace filters and all that. And you meet people like this, and they're fascinating people that are willing to share their skills. Yeah, it's the volunteer community and the volunteer commitment that it just makes our community.
I think that's a great example. We'll end the show on because we're out of time, but the fact that you can have expertise and contribute, or you can be the person who knows nothing about soccer and shows up and puts the uniforms in piles and ends up running the whole field, or you can come out of running logistics for the Army and end up helping mothers have a playground show up in the community. And we all have something to offer, and that's the message. So I want to thank Nell and George for all their work in the community and for joining me today, and congratulate them on being named Braddock's Lord and Lady Fairfax for 2016. It is indeed an honor to be chosen, and I appreciate all that they both have given back to the community. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you. Great.